571. A lie. Quote. And, I understand everything. The life she lived was a lie. From the woman she hated the most to the one she loved the most. It had all been a lie. I understand that you were also a victim in all of this. I'm sorry for how I treated you in the past. You were never the bad guy. Everything, all of it was all because of her. Because she existed. Quote. I now understand who the bad guy is. It was only now that she understood the truth. And the thought, it shattered whatever fragile pieces were still holding her together. It was me. I was the bad guy from the start. The realization was what changed her. She lost sight of her feelings, and the darkness she was so scared of suddenly seemed so comforting. And all of a sudden, she found herself in this strange state. A state in which all her surroundings were dark, and she felt in tune with the world. But at the same time, she felt herself lose her sense of self. She was disappearing. Drip. A warm tear slipped down her cheek. Opening her trembling lips, she looked at her aunt, who stared back at her with an open mouth. No, her gaze wasn't on her. It was in the diary in her hand. Ah, right, Kira tossed it to her. Her lips trembled as she tried to say something, but the words refused to leave her mouth. Eventually, she did manage to find her words again. You can look at it. It's hers. Her aunt hesitated before reaching for the diary, her fingers trembling as they brushed against its worn cover. Eventually, she grabbed the diary and opened it to the first page. Her expression shifted entirely as she slowly lifted her head to look at Kira, who smiled at her. See, though she smiled, her eyes were hollow. Quote. I'm the bad guy, aren't I? I should just Disa. You're right, you're the bad guy. Rose suddenly cut Kira off, causing her to freeze. Closing her eyes, Rose's cold voice echoed in the air. You're the reason she's gone. Her killer. Evangeline Milna. That was her name, the name of Kira's mother and Rose's sister. She was beautiful, kind, and intelligent. She was the personification of perfection. But even the most beautiful flowers had imperfections. Some stood out sharply, while others remained almost invisible. There's nothing better than spring. It's sweet and tender. But also painful, because it reminds me of the freedom that I can never have. My daughter. I hate her. Every time I see her, I have the sudden urge to leave. It feels suffocating. All of it. Help me. Imperfections weren't always easy to see. Some hid their imperfections, while others proudly flaunted them. Evangeline was the former. She hid her imperfections from the world, never allowing anyone to catch a glimpse of them. And that was what eventually consumed her. Single quote. Is that really what you think happened? A voice softly spoke next to Rose's ear as Evangeline's figure sat cross-legged opposite her. Do you think the reason why I left is because of that? Rose tightened her grip on the diary, her fingers trembling against its worn cover. As her eyes scanned the first lines, her chest grew heavy. Each word clawed at her, suffocating her every breath. The further she read, the deeper she sank, as if the pages were pulling her into a darkness she couldn't escape from. Still, amidst the darkness in the diary, Rose saw something else. Something that Kira probably didn't see. You're seeing it, right? The reason why I had to leave. You're seeing it, right? Rose bit her lips, taking a deep breath and raising her head. A pair of frozen eyes met her gaze as Rose closed the diary in her hands. It's true, you were the reason. She died. But you're not the only one at fault. I also killed her. Kira's mouth opened, but Rose didn't allow her to continue. I wasn't the best sister. In order to be perfect, your mother struggled a lot. The reason Evangeline was perfect wasn't just because she wanted to please their parents. Far from it, it was also because Evangeline wanted to protect her own sister. To grant her the freedom she never had. I knew of her struggles, but I never did anything to help her. I killed her, just like you did. Rose's chest trembled. The words hurt so much, and yet, they also felt liberating. Your father also killed her. He was very strict with you as a child. Your mother didn't like that, and the two of them would often get into fights. What are you? There's also the fact that spring was just about to end. She really liked spring. It's probably the only season that she liked. Spring. She really liked spring, didn't she? Rose recalled the reason why her sister learned how to paint. It was so that she could capture spring and remind herself of it when it was gone. Our parents' expectations were also what killed her. I think they were proud of her, but at the same time, they failed to see her as a person and more as a tool. They were the first ones to set the chains on her. They were also the first ones to strip her of her freedom. There's also the fact that you were always attached to me. Just look at yourself. You may have her face, but your heart, your mannerisms, they're mine. I think she was jealous. I wasn't jealous. She was. That perfect sister of hers getting jealous. The thought was somewhat comical. Ha, ha. It was absurd enough to make her laugh, though the sound that escaped her lips was tight and strained. Biting her lip, Rose looked up at Kira. She was now looking at her, tears streaming down both cheeks. Rose held onto her severed arm and groaned. The pain from the fight was finally starting to hit her. Nonetheless, she reached towards Kira with her remaining hand. I was too young and immature to understand how your mother felt back then. I ignored all the signs. And that's why, I'm the one who's the most guilty. Rose closed her eyes, her chest tightening with such intensity that the pain from her severed arm seemed distant, almost insignificant in comparison. Opening her eyes again, her face softened. But so what if we're guilty? I was young and naive back then. That was why I couldn't do anything for her. You, on the other hand, were just a child. What could you have done for her? In some ways, you can say that your mother's death was a result of a lot of unfortunate circumstances. From the fights with her husband, to the passing of Spring, to her jealousy, too. Rose stopped. Her eyes started to sting, and her vision was blurry. Looking ahead, two figures appeared. One was Kira, and the other was Evangeline. They were both looking at her. Rose's lips trembled at the sight. In the end, though guilty, the reason why all of this happened was because she never learned to care for herself. She studied to make her parents proud. She studied to give her sister freedom. She fought with her husband to give her daughter freedom. But what about her? Who fought for her? Do you know what her imperfection is? Kira shook her head, her cheeks streaming with even more tears. Rose smiled then. She loved too much, to the point where she forgot to love herself. That one flaw is the reason she's no longer here. Because that flaw took her away from them. Here, Rose suddenly turned to the next page of the diary and handed it to Kira. Have a look at it yourself. Kira shook her head, but Rose didn't care and simply handed the diary back to her. It was then that Kira's eyes fell on the diary again, and her eyes fell on the lines she had never gotten to. Her entire body froze then. Kira's chest trembled once more. Whenever I look at her soft, tender features, I can't help but feel suffocated. Reading the first line, she almost felt like dropping the diary again. It hurt. It hurt so much. I hate the sight of her. Why should I read this? I hate so much that she looks like me. Stop. But, Kira's entire body froze. I also love her. I love her too much. To the point where I'm scared. Scared of loving her too much. I'm not a good person. I am flawless, yet so imperfect. That's why I feel so suffocated looking at her. Because I'm scared of her growing up with a mother that's so imperfect like me. But I still tried. For the sake of my daughter, I tried. I tried really hard to stay. But, the more I stayed, the more I started to loathe myself. Every little imperfection stood out like a glaring light. Every flaw was magnified, undeniable. Everything about me was a reminder of my flaws. Alongside hatred, I felt despair, sadness, and loneliness. Each day felt more suffocating. As if the little freedom I had was slowly being taken away from me, and that's when I knew that I couldn't stay any longer. I tried, but I failed. Hence why I'm writing this. Because I failed. I failed to look past my flaws. To move past it. None of it is anyone's fault. I'm just not meant for this world. And, for the little time that I was here, the last few years, they've been the best. I hate my daughter, but I also love her more than anything in this world. Drip, drip. Several droplets suddenly stained the diary as Kira reached the end of it. For the first time since a while back, her eyes regained some clarity. It was also then that she heard her aunt's voice again. She didn't hate you for what you did, as he hated herself for loving you so deeply, because in that love, she saw how little she valued her own worth. Struggling to keep her breath in check, Rose took a deep breath. That's why you can't say you want to disappear. That your life is worthless. Because the one she loved the most was none other than you. And she wanted you to know that. Rose slowly turned her head, focusing on the other figure who looked at her with her usual half-hearted smile. Aren't I right? Isn't this the reason you keep haunting me? 572. It all still felt like a blur. That day, the day she left, it still felt like a blur. Rose really forgot about everything that came after that. Life just seemed to move faster and faster, leaving her behind. That day, she lost everything. Her sisters, her parents, and her niece. By the time stopped for her once again, a decade had passed. In that decade, she rotted in a cell, wasting her days mindlessly staring at the passing of time. That was until she appeared again. Masteno, Rose. She was the spitting image of her. From her eyes to her hair. But she too was flawed. It was just that, unlike her, she showed her flaws. She wasn't afraid of flaunting them. Perhaps it was a good thing Kira learned to hate her. That way, she wouldn't have to go as far as hating herself like her mother did. This way, she'd learn to move on and finally move forward. Ook. Rose suddenly flinched. The pain from the severed arm started to grow more prominent. She had lost a lot of blood. Her vision was blurry, and she was struggling to keep her breath in. Check. Crackle tilde. The flames around them crackled, and in the distance, Rose could feel that something was happening. More reinforcements. Rose bitterly smiled. This looks like the end for me. She had lost a lot of blood. Even if the reinforcements came fast enough to stop her blood loss, she would still be facing the death penalty. The crime of escaping prison was as such. And not only that, but she knew that the higher-ups within that place wanted her dead. This was the end for her, and Rose knew it. Lifting her head quietly, she stared at the distant flames. Crackle tilde. They crackled fiercely in the surroundings. They were bright, very bright, but even the fiercest of fires eventually died down. That was how Rose felt about herself. A dying flame, or at least, that was what she believed. Just as she lay down, gazing up at the sky, a shadow fell over her. Looking up, she saw a pair of hazel eyes staring down at her. Rose frowned, but just as she was about to speak, she saw Julian retrieve a small device from his pocket. I found this a while back. It was a small rectangular cube. It was hidden quite well, but I managed to find it. I take it that this is yours. The sight of the cube left her completely speechless. She, of course, knew exactly what the cube was. It was the very device she had been searching for from the beginning, the one thing that could have granted her escape and made her life easier. He found it. Rose secretly swallowed her saliva. Although the sight of the cube made her a little excited, she recalled her current position, and her heart settled. But that was until he tossed it to her. Here, dropping onto her chest, Rose blinked her eyes a couple of times, unsure of how to react to Julian's unexpected actions. Was he really? I don't really know what's going on between you and them, but given that they've been chasing you, going back probably isn't a good idea. You should take some time to heal, and stay hidden. Perhaps once enough time passes, things will settle. Maybe they'll forgive you. Rose swallowed quietly. Though he was speaking ambiguously, Rose seemed to understand exactly what he was trying to say. Go and hide. I'll try to settle things and have you return. In other words, he wanted her to join his side. Rose opened her mouth, but as she did, she suddenly felt a pair of crimson eyes settle on her. Her mouth opened, but soon closed as she grabbed the cube. All right. Without sparing a glance in Kira's direction, Rose forced herself up and staggered away from the spot. Every part of her ached with every movement, but she pushed forward regardless. This wasn't the best place for her to use the cube. Just as she staggered toward a nearby tree, a faint voice called out from behind her. Aunt. Rose stopped for a brief moment, her back turned against the voice. Crackle tilde. Beyond the fierce crackling of the fire, an eerie silence settled over the space as Rose waited quietly for Kira to speak. She bit her lips as she waited. For some reason, she was a little nervous. Was she going to get berated for running away again? For running away from the Empire and responsibilities? Whatever the case was, Rose was ready to take it. Because she was indeed running away. I'll see you. But the words that she expected to come out of her niece never came out. Instead, she received a simple, I'll see you. Rose's back trembled faintly, but soon, a smile marred her features. Without looking back, she quietly left the premises. Her cold heart felt a little warmer. It's strangely comforting how such simple words can turn me like this. Is it? Because I've always wished you'd say them to me. That way, I would know you wouldn't disappear. How bitter. Rose finally stopped, her breathing rougher than before. She was almost completely spent. Leaning down against one of the trees, she slowly slid back down. I think this is far enough. She looked at the cube in her hand and channeled the little mana she had in it. A faint glow manifested over it shortly after, and Rose's face winced in pain. Even so, she held on. She was close. Leaving so soon? Amidst the pain, a faint voice reached her ears. When she raised her head, a familiar figure stood before her. She smiled at her. I'm saddened by the fact that you're leaving so soon. I would have loved to see my daughter for a little longer. Instead of getting angry or ignoring her like she usually did, Rose smiled. Same. She's grown up quite well. Well, I guess. Evangeline placed her hand over her cheek and sighed. She didn't really look satisfied. What? Don't tell me you were actually jealous by the fact that she turned out to be like me. Single quote. No, not jealous. At least look at me when you say you're not jealous. Evangeline shrugged, and Rose laughed. Stupid bitch, I can totally see right through you. She was definitely jealous. Rose had already thought this before, but it really was a funny thought. But her smile didn't linger for much longer as she shifted her attention back to the cube once more. Now that place is no longer safe, I'm kind of lost. What should I do now? What should you do? Isn't it obvious? What? Single quote. Live for yourself. Rose blinked her eyes and looked at her sister. Live for myself? What sort of nonsense are you talking about? It's not nonsense. What? How much time have you wasted living in my own shadow? From the time you wasted in a jail cell to the time you wasted in the organization you never wanted to be a part of to begin with. Never want to be in it. What made you? You knew all along that they were searching for the mirror. They sought you out because they believed you resented me, that you resented the entire family for neglecting you. Quote. You joined to protect me. Us. Rose bit her lip. You did it. You managed to protect us. But now, your job is over. It's time to move on as well. It's time you learn to love yourself. That's rich coming from you. Hee hee. What are you laughing like an idiot for? Just because. Well, stop it. I don't like it. Hey now, I'm still the older sister here. Why do you have to speak to me like that? Because you're a bitch. You really are a bad influence on Key. If you knew, then you shouldn't have died. It's too late for regrets now. You're right, it's too late for regrets. Rose's lips trembled, and her eyes started to sting as she lowered her head. But, even if it's too late to regret, if you could turn back time, would you still do it? Single quote. Probably. I see. Rose nodded her head in understanding. You must have been struggling a lot, huh? I was a fool for not seeing it, but, did you really have to give up on yourself like that? Did you? Drip, drip. Tears suddenly started to stream down Rose's face. Quote. When you gave up, it felt like you gave up on me too, on your daughter, on everyone who ever loved you. Like we weren't enough to make you stay. Rose clenched her shirt, and that shit hurt. It hurt so fucking much. Her vision was now blurred with tears as she bit her lips so hard they started to bleed. I hate you, more than you can ever imagine. You ruined my life. You're everything that I don't ever want to be. Fuck, shit, if I ever have to give up on myself, I still won't do it knowing that I. Cutting Rose short, she suddenly felt something warm. As she lifted her head, she saw her sister's figure wrapped around her in a tight embrace. A shuddering breath escaped her, and for a moment, she felt completely breathless. I know, her sister's gentle voice whispered in her ear. Single quote. And I'm happy that you think that way. Why whoa, you're very strong, a lot stronger than I ever was. No, it's okay, I know that I was weak. If I didn't know, I wouldn't have left. But you know, I was just tired, really tired, I just wanted to rest. Quote. I know, as always, you understand me the best. Evangeline smiled. That's why I've always liked hanging out with you. In the brief moments we did stay together, I felt like I could breathe again. Quote. Not only that, but you also took care of protecting Key for me. Evangeline suddenly leaned back to get a better look at Rose. Her half-hearted smile turned into a genuine and warm smile. Single quote. Thank you for taking on such a heavy burden for me. Staring at her warm smile, Rose didn't know how to reply or react. All she could do was stare. She stared at her sister, wide-eyed, as a brilliant white glow suddenly erupted from the cube in her hand, spreading outward until it slowly began to consume her entirely. The last words she heard were a simple, "See you," before everything turned white and her body was transported away. When Rose finally woke, she found herself lying on something soft. Looking up, Rose hastily looked around for any trace of her sister, but she was no longer there. She was gone. Quote. The realization hit her rather quickly. Gone. She's gone. Her sister. Rose's chest trembled, but as it did, she felt something touch the tip of her nose. Chirp tilde chirp tilde. It was a small brown bird. It was also then that she finally took notice of her surroundings as she found herself lying on a soft bed of grass, surrounded by blooming flowers and towering trees. The scenery was beautiful, so much so that Rose found herself unconsciously opening her mouth. But soon, she calmed down as she was suddenly reminded of something. Spring, she mumbled, her head rolling back onto the grass. It's not so bad. 573. Russell tilde. It didn't take long for the reinforcements to come. You're here. What's going on? But by the time they had arrived, everything was already over. It couldn't be helped. The entire sequence of events didn't take more than several minutes in total. While it felt like several hours had passed, it had all been incredibly quick. From the defeat of the members of the Inverted Sky to Kira's aunt's escape. It had all taken just a few minutes. It also wasn't hard to look for the teleportation device. All I had to do was spread out my threads through every inch of the place in order to find it. You're finally here. I turned my head to see a pair of familiar gray eyes emerge from one of the bushes. He looked somewhat surprised to see me doing fine. Why do you look disappointed? I'm not. You are. You're right. My lip twitched. He wasn't even trying to hide it. I was just about to open my mouth and say something when something blurred past me, heading straight for Kira. I tried to react, but I wasn't fast enough. Why? By the time I reacted, it was already too late, as the silhouette pounced on Kira, who opened her eyes wide. It was also then that the silhouette became clear, and I stopped dead in my tracks. You're fine, aren't you? A voice lingered in the air. It was calm and also warm. However, looking at his large back from where I stood, I could see that it was trembling. I understand that you resent me for what happened with your mother, and I understand that. But I still don't wish for anything bad to happen to you. Whatever happened in the past, you are still my daughter. Please take care of yourself if you won't allow me to. Kira's mouth opened as she tried to say something, but soon stopped as she brought her hands around her father's. Okay, that was all she said, but at the same time, her hands squeezed tightly around her father. I'll do it. That's goo. I'll let you take care of me. Huh, it's your job, after all. The next day. So you're saying that Rose was able to defeat the 4 guardians by herself? Naturally, after the events of the previous day, delegates from the Megrail family were sent to the estate to interrogate us. With the severity of the incident and the loss of an entire squad, the situation quickly escalated. I, alongside Kira and a few others, was put into questioning. Yes, it was just here. I saw her defeat all 4 of them with my own eyes. Right now, I was lying through my teeth. The deaths of the squad members were largely the result of what the 3 of us had accomplished together. And no one would believe that Kira and I had played a role in defeating such powerful opponents. In fact, it was still unbelievable. I don't know if you found it, but there should be an arm lying around somewhere. That belongs to Rose. She took quite a few injuries during the fight. Yes, we managed to find it. Interrogating me was a lanky man with sharp eyes and brows. With shoulder-length black hair, he appeared to be extremely serious as he analyzed the information in front of him. As he looked through them, I overheard him mumble. The fact that they're all burned to a crisp aligns with her abilities. There's no sign of anything else at play. Is this really the truth? But if so, does that mean she's even stronger than previously reported? I just patiently waited in my seat while he continued mumbling to himself. I was confident that they wouldn't be able to find anything even if they tried their hardest. The bodies of the people who had been killed had all been burned to a crisp, therefore making it impossible for them to notice any trace of emotive magic in their bodies, even if they wanted to. There was no way they'd be able to link it to me. Of course, I also knew that things were far from over. I still had to answer to those from the Inverted Sky. Nonetheless, I was already prepared. I see. Well, everything aligns with what we've observed. It seems we'll need to re-evaluate the individual known as Rose. As if satisfied with what he'd found, the man stood up and closed the evidence book in front of me. He extended his hand in my direction. Thank you very much for your cooperation, and I'm sorry for bothering you. As you know, this is quite a big matter, so we were left with no choice but to interrogate you. It's fine, I coolly replied, similarly standing up and shaking his hand. Then, without casting another glance in his direction, I turned around and left the room. Clank. Waiting outside of the room were a few familiar faces. Were you guys interrogated as well? No, We weren't directly involved, so there was no need for us to be interrogated. Oh, answering was Aoife, who looked troubled. Was she worried about the 4 guards who had been killed? I briefly considered a way to comfort her but ultimately decided against it. The less she knew, the better. But there's something else that's bothering me. Aoife's brows furrowed extremely tightly. So much so that I started growing concerned. Did she find something? If so, then things were going to be quite troublesome. Maybe I should. I usually bring my camera with me, but in the rare time that I didn't, I missed the chance to capture Kira crying. Do you guys think there's a way to turn back time? Just a little bit, just so that I can remind my past self to bring the camera. Quote. Right then, whatever words were about to come out of my mouth stopped. I soon felt my face change as I stepped back. What? Why are you looking at me like that? It's as if you're looking at something disgusting. I didn't answer and just moved away. What a sick princess. Capturing a photo of Kira in her weakest moment. What utterly disgusting demeanor. Hey, why are you repeatedly looking at your forearm? Is there something wrong with your forearm? I pulled my hand behind me. I injured it. Even now, it still hurts. I was only looking because it hurt. Not because of Aoife's words. It wasn't as if I could actually do what Aoife said. Me going back in time to interact with my past self. Never. Damn it, why did I also forget about the camera? At the same time, elsewhere. Within the Nurs-Ansifa Empire, 4 powerful duchies held dominion. Each controlled vast territories, their influence second only to the prestigious Megrail estate. Each territory bordered one another, often leading to several small skirmishes between the territories. Thankfully, the clashes were minor, occurring only occasionally, often due to small disagreements. None of these conflicts ever escalated into anything significant, nor did any of the duchies have any real intention of engaging in a large-scale war. Not only because the Megrail family would immediately step in but also because of a certain duchy. The Rosenberg Duchy, with Orson Rosenberg at the helm, leading central, and in no small part due to his only daughter, Delilah V. Rosenberg. With the 2 at the helm of the Rosenberg household, none of the other duchies entertained the thought of starting any conflict. In fact, one might even argue that the 3 other duchies were submissive to the Rosenberg household. Currently, within the main manor of the Rosenberg household, a small dinner was taking place. I'm very happy that you've finally made some time with me, Delilah. A thin smile crossed Orson Rosenberg's face as he sliced the steak before him. This was one of the rare occasions he could enjoy dinner with his daughter. How long had it been? Quote. Yes. As opposed to him, Delilah didn't look particularly excited. Staring at the steak in front of her, she sliced it before placing it in her mouth and chewing it. So, how is it? It comes from an extremely rare breed of cows that I managed to find just for this occasion. The marbling not only is amazing and rich, but the taste is just on point. Oh, it's good. Delilah pretended to agree. In fact, she didn't care. It wasn't chocolate, so. Quote. I'm glad you like it. Orson appeared genuinely satisfied by her word and sliced another piece. Very good. Oh, right. How is the academy? You haven't been telling me much. It's good. That's all. Delilah thought for a moment before cocking her head. Quote. A bit boring now. Boring. Orson blinked his eyes. Why? Is there a lot of work? Oh, right. Considering what had recently happened, then it does make sense. If not really. Delilah dismissed her father's words. The workload was not that much more. The reason why she was bored was something else. Then, sensing something, Orson frowned. Don't tell me it's because you aren't eating chocolate. Delilah, what is it with you and chocolate? We've talked about this before. But, no, not really. Delilah once again dismissed her father. Not chocolate. His face showed genuine signs of shock. Not chocolate. Was this really his daughter? Orson suddenly started to have a weird feeling as he stopped slicing his steak. This, boredom, is the reason you're bored because you're by yourself. Quote. Delilah blinked for a moment before nodding. Yes. Orson pursed his lips as he set his utensils on the table. Oh, I see. I think I get what's going on. You're bored because you're missing someone. Missing. Delilah's large obsidian eyes blinked for a moment before she nodded again. Yes, you can say so. Wow, so you've made a friend. Orson looked at his daughter with a happy smile. Outside of pleasant surprise, he was also somewhat shocked. Of all people, someone actually was able to be friends with his antisocial daughter. This, whoever she is, she must be a saint. I see. So you're bored because your friend isn't here. Ha ha. Orson let out a small chuckle. That's rare of you. If that's the case, then you must like them quite a bit. Quote. Delilah didn't answer immediately and blinked her eyes for a brief moment. Like them quite a bit. She thought about her father's words for a brief moment before answering. Yes, probably. 574. Puff. Smoke lingered in the air as Kira sat alone, gazing at the forest stretching beyond her estate. In the distance, she could see the damage caused by the fire started by her aunt, with many of the trees burnt beyond recognition. She sat there in silence while enjoying the cigarette in her grasp. At least, she tried. This tastes like shit. Pulling the cigarette away from her mouth, Kira frowned. Since when did cigarettes taste this bad? Nah, maybe it's just me. She took another drag, but, ook, it still tasted like shit. What the? Kira took a look at the cigarette in her hand for a good moment before eventually clicking her tongue and tossing it away. Ah, whatever. Perhaps it was just a low-quality cigarette. It could also be that it was expired, but could cigarettes expire? No, it would make no sense, considering that she had recently bought them. Swindled. Was she swindled? All fucking kill. Are you sure you should be littering? It was then that Kira heard the sound of a familiar voice as they sat next to her. She frowned and looked to her right. Are you just going to sit here without asking? May I sit? No. Quote. I'll still sit. Tisk. Clicking her tongue, Kira reached for her cigarette box, her fingers brushing against another one before she hesitated. She stared at the cigarettes for a moment, then closed her eyes and put them away. Not going to take them. Quote. They've expired. Is that so? If I say they are, they are. Kira made a face and leaned back on the bench. She tried to focus on the view before her, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't seem to take in the scenery. In actuality, there was something that had been gnawing at her for quite a while. It was regarding the mirror. She hadn't actually been fully honest with Julian. In fact, she wasn't actually completely clueless about where it was. In fact, she knew exactly where it was. It was just that, I'm not even sure if it's the real thing. Whatever the piece of junk hiding in her dorm was, it was no artifact, she was sure of that much. Not only that, but it was also broken. That was why she was so hesitant about bringing it up. Because she didn't want to give him any false hopes. But seeing everything that had happened, she understood that there was no point in hiding it anymore. Pursing her lips, she finally spoke. Hey, quote. Regarding the Miro. Don't worry about it. Julian waved his hand, cutting her off. I already resolved the problem. I don't really need it anymore. But, I'm more worried about Aoife. Julian promptly cut her off again, bringing up a completely different topic. Kira tried to argue again, but Julian spoke before she could get her point out. You, of all people, should know how Aoife is. If we tell her that the guards she sent to help us were actually spies from another organization, there's no doubt she'd try something. I feel like that might be problematic. Kira blinked her eyes, her mind drifting towards Aoife. He had a point, but wouldn't that be a good thing? Would it be? Julian slowly turned his head to look at her. If the organization is capable of planting spies within the Megrail family itself, do you really think it would be wise to tell her about the situation? Kira had a sudden look of understanding. She hadn't put much thought into the situation. There were too many things for her to think about than this. In that sense, it was a good thing that she hadn't talked to Aoife yet. But still, don't you think that she might have people that she could tell? Even if she does, it would still make her a target. I'm sure that whatever this organization is, they must have eyes everywhere. Exposing this to Aoife would only bring about more danger. Then should we just ignore it? Quote. For now, yes. Kira's brows knitted tightly, clearly not fully on board with his words, but it didn't seem like Julian cared much about her opinion or how she felt. You've seen what they're capable of. If even your aunt was enslaved by them and nearly taken out by a mere squad, you should understand just how powerful they truly are. For now, the best decision would be to do nothing and just get stronger. Julian paused, his eyes staring straight at her. Quote. Just like now. You've gotten a lot stronger. I did. Didn't we beat a few high ranks? Yes, but we did it. Julian stood up from the bench, casually yawning while mumbling something like, I should probably get some sleep. Didn't get enough sleep. Squinting his eyes, Julian looked at the distant forest before turning away. It's true that you wouldn't have been able to defeat it without my help or your aunt's, but it's also undeniable that neither of us could have won without you. That new power of yours. Julian paused, giving her a quick look before heading away. Quote. It's pretty impressive. If you hadn't been so scared of your own powers, you probably could have been the Black Star at the start of the year. Not that it matters now, I'm ahead of you anyway. Huh, what sort of nonsense? It's true, I'm a lot stronger than you. But, Kira felt her lip twitch. Was he flaunting his strength? I'll keep investigating the organization. In your current state, if you try to do the same, you'll probably just be a burden. If you really want to continue, then at least try to keep up with me. Otherwise, Julian didn't finish his words, but the meaning was clear. Kira's nose scrunched up as she watched him slowly walk away, his steps and back carefree. It was only after he disappeared from sight that Kira lowered her head, staring at her hands. As she did, her crimson eyes flickered faintly, and a dark film began to creep slowly over her arms. Clenching and unclenching her fists, she watched as the dark film gradually faded away. With a quiet sigh, she leaned back against the bench once more. You think I don't know? Staring at the clear blue sky above, Kira felt a cool breeze brush past her. Swoosh. As her platinum hair swayed in the breeze, she thought about the date and closed her eyes, letting the cool air wash over her. Spring. Maybe I'm starting to get why you liked it so much. It's not so bad. The next few days passed by in a blur. After the interrogation, several high-ranked inquisitors were dispatched to investigate the premises. During those days, we were confined to the estate. Their initial intention was to keep us there longer, but that simply wasn't an option. With Amael present, and the same being true for Keys, the inquisitors had no choice but to release us without much delay. Aoife also played a big part in that. All in all, we still managed to make it back to the academy in time. It's only been a week, and yet it feels like I've been gone for over a month. I hope that we won't have to go out anymore. Arriving at the academy entrance, Evelyn dropped her bag to the ground and took a deep breath. Judging by her expression, she looked extremely glad to be back. It's not like you did anything during the time we were in Kira's place. In fact, Kira and I were the only ones who suffered in those times. Just thinking about it made me depressed. Single quote. At least I've managed to resolve one big issue and acquired the mirror. One could argue that the trip wasn't fruitless. Not only did I acquire the mirror, but I also managed to resolve one of my biggest problems. With the danger of Julian seizing control of this body no longer looming, I could finally focus entirely on my quests and training. Well, hopefully. Up until now, I never actually managed to get enough time to just purely focus on training. No, that's not quite right. I did get a chance back at the Evanis estate, but that was about it. There were still many things I needed to focus on, like my emotive control. I had neglected my training in that area for too long, and it was in serious need of refinement. I still had the cube with me and used it quite often to train, but there was still a lot to be desired. When I have some time, I should get in touch with Professor Heavenheart. It had been a while since I had last talked to her. Oh, look, the academy finally looks like it's back to how it used to be. As Evelyn had pointed out, the academy was indeed different from how we had last left it. The facilities were no longer in ruins, and the once missing greenery had been fully restored to its former state. Cadets appeared all around the premises, walking and talking as though nothing had previously happened. In general, the vibe of the academy looked to be the same as it once was when I first entered. It was a refreshing sight to some extent. But, for how long will I be able to enjoy this sight? I hoped it would last at least a week or two. Yes, that would be enough. I knew that soon enough, a quest would come, either pulling me away from the academy again or demanding a major part of my attention. By then, I wouldn't be able to focus on relaxing and training. I would once again be thrust into a situation where I'd have to rack my brain over and over in an attempt to figure out the meaning behind whatever vision I was going to experience. Just the thought made my head ache. However, that very thought made me want to cherish the little time I had left before something inevitably happened. With that in mind, I excused myself from the others and made my way to my room. The first thing I did upon arriving at my room was lie on the bed and close my eyes. For now, I'll get some sleep. Classes should start in 2 days, so I have time to rest. In the meantime, I should rest and prepare for the inevitable quest that is going to come. I was both excited and annoyed. Excited by the prospect of growing stronger again, but annoyed at the fact that I wouldn't have any time for myself. Well, it's not like I have to follow the quests. I wasn't exactly being forced into completing them. I could neglect them if I wanted, but the reward was too good to give up on. Not only that, but the consequences of failing the quest were something I didn't even want to consider, even though I wasn't entirely sure what they did. By now, my life was tied with the quests. This was especially so after realizing that I had now completed 73% of the game progression. I was now only 27% away from reaching the end. I wonder what will happen when that happens. Would I be able to find out where Noelle is, or will something else happen? I wasn't sure, but I was going to find out soon enough. Yeah, soon. Taking a deep breath, I slowly sank into my sleep. At that moment, I prepared to get as much rest as possible before the inevitable quest arrived. However, that quest never came. Even as 6 months passed, a new quest never arrived. By the end of the year, a lot of things had changed. I managed to reach the 6th tier before anyone else, becoming the Black Star once again. I also managed to refine my control over my emotive magic while sharpening my existing skills. And, I also received a marriage proposal. 575. Time passes before you know it. What seemed like just a few hours quickly stretched into days, and before anyone realized it, half a year had gone by. Half a year wasn't much, but it was enough time for a lot of change to occur. Swoosh. Dozens of threads materialized from my right arm, weaving their way across every corner of the vast training ground before me. In the distance, 4 figures stood, gazing at the invisible threads with seemingly effortless focus. For your information, you're not supposed to fight back. The figures were none other than Leon, Keys, Amael, and Kalian. I was trying to test something. So we're just supposed to take it. Leon's lips twitched in the distance as he brought his sword forward. The other 3 also got into defensive stances. Yes, pretty much. I smiled and pressed my hands together. As soon as I moved, the threads shot up into the air, and I could see the expressions of all 4 of them tighten. In normal circumstances, where they could fight back properly, they wouldn't have looked so worried. But I had asked them a favor. A simple favor. That is, to be my testing dummies for a new skill I had developed over the past 6 months. It was still a work in progress, but I was getting there. Ready. I stopped and looked at the 4 of them as several dozen threads stood straight in the air. Leon looked around him and then looked back at me. You're going to pay us for this, right? I blinked my eyes in confusion. Pay? Did this guy lose his mind or something? Wait, you're not. Of course not. I pointed at Kalian, Keys, and Amael. These 3 right here probably have way more money than I have. Why would I even pay them? This was ridiculous. And it's not like this is a bad chance for you guys to test yourselves against my new skill. It's not perfect, but I'm sure you guys will learn a few things from it. Yes, but, what about me? Leon said while pointing at himself. I raised my brow. What about you? I'm not rich like them. I would like to get pa. You already get paid by my family. You should be glad that I haven't fired you yet. How many times has it been since you've actually done your job? I can hardly count any. Hey, should you be really talking to him like that? With Amael suddenly cutting in, I turned to look at him as my eyes narrowed. Ah, shit, I forgot these 2 are related. What disgusting genetics. For your information, he likes it when I talk to him like this. Amael suddenly looked at Leon with a shocked look as he covered his mouth. He had a face that seemed to say, I didn't know you were like that. That's what I done. Anyway, get ready. I'm about to get started. I pressed my hands together before the 2 could clear up the misunderstanding. In that instant, their expressions shifted, and they all suddenly dropped into a defensive stance. A change occurred to the threads shortly after that. At the same moment, a sharp pain coursed through my head, as if it were being split open, and beads of sweat began to drip down the side of my face. Clenching my fist, each thread began to split into several smaller ones, each thinner than the last. Exclamation mark question mark quote. The pain grew sharper with each thinning, and my body unconsciously started to tremble. I took several deep breaths, pushing through the pain while maintaining focus on the splitting threads. It was only when each individual thread had split 5 times that I stopped, letting out a heavy gulp of air. Hooick! I let go of my grip, and the thread suddenly twisted together before shooting into the air. It's coming. The expressions of the 4 shifted suddenly at the sight, just as the threads shot upward, and that's when it happened. Shoo! Small, needle-shaped threads shot down from above.
At first, it was just one or two, but soon enough. Shoo, shoo, shoo. It started to rain. Exclamation mark question mark quote. Keys was the first to move, extending his hand forward. However, his expression quickly shifted as several thin streaks of red appeared on his exposed hand. He quickly lifted his hand shortly after that, and all the threads around him paused in the air. It was only once he did so that everyone was able to witness just how many threads were surrounding them as Kalian and the rest all did their best to defend themselves against the needle-like threads. Staring at them from where I stood, I took several deep breaths as I sat down on the ground. That took a lot more stamina and mana than I expected. And looking at the four of them in the distance, I could see that while they were all wary of the threads, none of them looked particularly concerned. At least, not yet. What the? That was until they suddenly realized something. You cursed the threads. I smiled then as I watched the faces of the four pale. These were no ordinary threads. Infused with curse magic, the moment they made contact with them, or even so much as grazed them, they would get cursed. But that wasn't the best part of it all. No, the best part of it all was the fact that the effect stacked. Meaning that the more they were touched by the needle-like threads, the stronger the curse would grow, becoming increasingly potent with each contact. This new type of attack was something I had developed over the past 6 months, a period during which I could fully focus on honing my abilities and training without any distractions. It was safe to say that my training had been fruitful. But, of course, things were still far from perfect. Ook, damn it. While the four of them were struggling, it was mainly due to the fact that they were completely unaware of the curse placed within each thread. Otherwise, they wouldn't be struggling so much. It's good so far, but there's still a lot more to develop before I can fully use it. The rain of thread was lacking a few things. One was speed, and the second was detectability. If one had sharp enough senses, they could detect the pin-like threads heading their way. Thankfully, the solution to this problem was easy to fix. I just need to integrate the attack with Lament of Lies. By doing this, I could make it difficult for my enemies to detect the threads. The only problem was that the attack already consumed a significant amount of mana and concentration. Adding Lament of Lies to the mix would drain me completely, leaving me with nothing. Of course, I could limit the number of threads and all that as well. There's still so much to work on. Shaking my head, I leaned back on the ground as the rain of threads eventually ceased, leaving behind 4 bodies on the ground as they all tried to suppress the effect of the curse. Don't worry, I didn't go too hard. I only injected the most basic curse into the threads. You'll feel fine in the next few minutes. My words were met with a couple of looks. I could only shrug and focus my attention on recuperating my mana. In fact, there was something else that I wanted to try. It was just unfortunate that it wasn't ready just yet. Rather than not ready, it's more like I've still yet made much progress. I slowly turned my attention towards my arm. Beyond just this attack, I had been practicing my emotive control quite a lot. As of right now, my speech had become a lot stronger than it was in the past, reaching further than before. However, it was still not enough. Touch was still a lot more powerful and potent than speech was. So long as I touched someone, I could incapacitate them. But that was easier said than done. Getting close to someone was extremely difficult, and even with Lament of Lies, it was still hard. It was during my training with my threads that I had a sudden thought. Is it possible for me to infuse my emotive magic in the threads just like curse magic? This wasn't a new concept to me. I'd thought of it before, but my control had been so poor back then that it had seemed impossible. But the same couldn't be said for the current me. And it was true. It was still a work in progress, but the progress was noticeable. I just needed a little more before I could finally reach my desired goal. But once that happened, I took a deep breath, trying my best to calm my trembling heart. Snapping out of my thoughts, I looked in the direction of the 4 of them, and seeing that they were all fine, I stood up and walked towards them. See, it wasn't that bad. The first one to catch my sight was Leon, who looked at me with a look of disgust. I looked away from him and then the others. I wasn't the only one who had grown over the past 6 months. The 4 of them had, too, and they were, in fact, catching up with me. This was especially so for Leon. Well, it can't be helped. I'm not as talented as them. The only reason why I could grow so fast was because of the quest system that granted me the ability to grow faster. Otherwise, all 4 of them were far more talented than me. Maybe not in emotive magic, but in the other aspects, yes. I wasn't all too bothered. Their growth also helped fuel my growth. TRRR. Just then, I heard my communication vibrate, and my heart almost leapt out of my chest the moment I realized it was coming from the family head. Immediately, I looked towards Leon, who raised his brow. Family head. His expression showed similar changes as he quickly stood up from the floor and neared me. I looked at the other three, who seemed to have understood, as they quietly left. It was only when the three of them were gone that I answered. Just what exactly could this man want from me? Hello, yes. The family head's cold voice echoed from the communication device. I'll get straight to the point. You've received an invitation. Invitation? Yes, it's a very important one, involving several major figures from the Empire and other empires. Leon is also invited. You will be heading there as a delegate for the Evanis household. Oh, I will send you the details soon. Make sure you attend. The communication ended there. I frowned and glanced at Leon, who was doing the same, his gaze meeting mine. What just happened? 576. The Congress of Nezeret. That was the name of the event to which Leon and I were invited. Bringing together nearly all the major powers from each empire, along with the 7 churches, it was a gathering of immense scale. A congress of such magnitude was rarely convened, having occurred only 4 times in the past, each instance sparked by a crisis that involved the mirror dimension. I don't want to go. You must go. No, I don't want to. I'm doing just fine in the academy. Should I tell the family head that you're not going? Wait, hold on. Now that I think about it, as the heir of the Evanis household, it's my duty to attend. Pussy, what did you say? Leon turned his head away, absent-mindedly scratching his ear with his pinky. I could only glare at him from my spot. It wasn't like I was actually scared of the family head. No, it was more like he was too much trouble to refuse. I could only imagine what he'd do if I turned him down, either concoct some elaborate scheme to drag me along or simply pester me in the most troublesome way possible. In other words, I had no choice but to go. Here goes my free time. I had an inkling that something was going to happen at the Congress. Just an inkling. What are you doing? Snapping me out of my thoughts, I suddenly saw Leon walk over with a massive bag. It was filled to the brim with items, and upon closer inspection, I saw 2 swords. No, wait, 3. Why would he? That's not all that I'm bringing. As if proud of his collection, Leon set the bag down and opened it, retrieving several items and showing them to me. The first item he took out was a small necklace with a purple gemstone in the middle. This relic can shield against powerful mental attacks. It might not withstand a full-force strike from you, but it should be enough to block basic mental and emotive attacks. Oh, and it also enhances my ability to see through illusions. Oh, that's no, wait. Why do you need that in the first place? Look here. Leon retrieved another item. It was a plain black shorts. You brought a change of clothes. No, stupid. Leon shook his head before suddenly channeling his mana into the shirt. In an instant, a small shield materialized around him, and he shot me a smug smile. See this. He looked so proud. I spent a good amount of money on this. Not only does it generate a shield around the wearer when mana is injected, but the more mana you pour in, the stronger the shield becomes. It has an amplifying effect. If you inject your tier 6 mana, you can create a shield nearly on par with that of a tier 7 mage. Oh, okay, now I was impressed. With me needing to save as much money as possible in order to acquire the rights to the mirror crack near Elner, I barely spent any of my money on relics. Although I understood that they would help me grow stronger, I knew that, in the long run, acquiring the mirror crack would be far more beneficial for my growth. After all, once I acquire the mirror crack, I plan on going there often to fight monsters and level up. As of right now, entering the mirror dimension was quite a difficult task. Unless I joined a guild or was part of the royal family, the only way that I could enter a mirror crack was through several extremely troublesome processes. There was also the Academy mirror crack, but that was currently out of order. The only way to enter the mirror dimension without any worries was by acquiring one. But still, I'm jealous. I really wanted the relics Leon had. But most importantly, check this one out. It can hide my presank. Are you sure it's a good idea to be using your money like that? Leon paused and looked at me. I then pointed at the multiple swords sticking out from his bag. I get being prepared, but why are you bringing 3 swords? Shouldn't one be more than enough? Why, are you kidding me? Leon cut me off, looking at me with what appeared to be disgust. Do you even know why I went ahead and bought so many relics? It's because of you. Me. I raised my brow in surprise. Why was he suddenly acting like this? Wait, could it be? We're about to be leaving soon. Do you know what it means going out with you? Quote. I had no words or excuse. Indeed, but it's not like it's my fault. You know, I get it. You're going to say something about me not doing my job, right? Yes, I subconsciously nodded. That was when Leon looked down at the bag before him. And that's why I had no choice but to buy this. 1. Because you're a walking disaster. 2. Because I need them for my job. And 3. For my own safety. I've come too close to death, too many times to not leave prepared. Placing all the items back into the bag, Leon slowly lifted it and placed it on his shoulders before turning around. Quote. Oh, and for your information, I don't get paid enough for this. Clank. He smashed the door on his way out of my room, leaving me at a complete loss. The fuck just happened? While the four empires were mostly at peace, each preoccupied with its own problems, that didn't mean minor conflicts between them didn't exist. Conflicts over land had always existed among the four empires, often resulting in skirmishes. In total, 15 unoccupied territories existed between the four empires, with none of the empires able to agree on ownership. One such territory was called Nezeret. Situated near the borders of the Nurs Ansifa Empire, Verdant Empire, and Aurora Empire, Nezeret was a relatively large territory, largely covered by towering mountains. It was in such a place that the Congress was being held. Chuk. We have arrived at the final destination, Nezeret. Please depart using the exit doors. The train eventually came to a stop, and I stretched my body. At the moment, every part of me ached. The ride from Lens to Nezeret took over 9 hours, with the train coming to an occasional stop in several places. Quote. Let's go, we don't have much time. They'll close the doors soon. But it's the final destination. That's not how it works here. Under Leon's constant nagging, I took my luggage and headed for the train's exit. If teleportation weren't so expensive, I probably would have used it. Unfortunately, I had to spare every little penny, and the family head was similarly stingy. The moment I asked him for extra money, he directly hung up on me. Oh, it's cold. Stepping out of the train, I immediately felt my skin prickle at the cold as I hastily covered my body with a layer of mana. On the other hand, as if he had anticipated this from the start, Leon stood beside me, a large jacket draped over his body. He gave me a casual look before taking a step to the side and hastily looking around. What are you doing? I'm checking for any possible threats. You never know when someone might show up and attack us. It could be a tree, a dragon, your mom, or even a rock. At this point, anything could be an enemy. Quote. The thing that hurt the most about his words was the fact that I couldn't rebuke him at all. We should get out of here. We're attracting too much attention. The first thing I noticed upon stepping out of the station, aside from the cold, was the sheer number of people. The place was packed, and nearly everyone was dressed in formal attire, many of them looking like important figures. Although I wasn't sure if they still remembered me from the summit a year ago, I decided to be cautious and masked my features along with Leon. Coming out of the station, I was greeted by the sight of a large city. Vendors lined both sides of the cobblestone street, while large houses and buildings stood along the side. Not far from the vendors was a large portal where several people walked out every few minutes. The teleport station. I looked at the station with envy. If only I didn't have to save my money. One striking feature of the street was its gentle incline, leading toward a towering mountain in the distance, its peak piercing through the clouds. But that wasn't the most eye-catching thing. The most striking feature was the massive, dome-shaped white building embedded into the mountainside, its structure supported by several towering pillars that gave it an almost otherworldly presence in the distance. That's where the Congress will be held. We still have a day, so we should find the nearest inn and drop off our stuff. Quote. Rather than me dropping anything, it would be you who needs to drop his stuff. The goal of concealing our faces was to avoid drawing attention, but Leon's enormous bag was as conspicuous as ever. As a result, we attracted a lot of attention. Why is he carrying such a large bag? Single quote. Is he his attendant? Where are they from? They must be some low-tier nobles. I could even hear the murmurs of the people around us as they snaked glances our way. But the attention didn't last very long. Hey, look, oh my god, check it out.
A sudden commotion drew the attention of everyone present, and when I turned my head to face the distance, my eyes paused on the large portal that stood in the distance. It was then that I saw it fluctuate as several figures walked out. In an instant, it was as if the entire place had transformed, the atmosphere shifting. Talk. The soft click of a heel echoed as she stepped out of the portal. Dressed in a sleek black formal uniform with a white jacket draped over her shoulders, her lustrous black hair swayed gently with each step. Time seemed to freeze all of a sudden. All eyes turned to her as she strode forward, hands in her pockets, her expression haughty and detached. She appeared to be the center of all attention as several figures walked out behind her, their heads lowered in respect. It was also then that several people snapped out of their daze. That's, oh my God, how can anyone look like that? Is she even human? Indeed, staring at her from where I stood, she looked like a completely different person. Like an empress overlooking her subjects. I should leave. Seeing how much of a commotion she was causing, I decided to leave. However, just as I did so, I felt a pair of eyes fall on the back of my head. I ignored them and just looked at Leon. He was looking at me with a frown. I raised my brow. What? Leon's eyes narrowed even further. Just as I was about to get annoyed, he finally spoke. Did something happen? No, why would? You seem to be in a bad mood. What happened? 577. Why wouldn't I be in a bad mood? We spent most of the day just sitting on a train. And with your strange behavior on top of that, how could I possibly be in a good mood? Well, what you say makes sense, but there's no but. Let's go. I cut Leon off before he could launch into one of his weird tangents. With one last glance behind me, I strode toward the nearest inn. Having done a bit of research beforehand, I knew exactly where to go. Stepping away from the main street into a more secluded area, I soon found myself in front of a large wooden building. The building was quite large, with several pots of flowers and plants adorning the windows, their leaves cascading downward. At the front of the building was a large sign that read, Moonlight Inn. This should be the place. From the research that I managed to gather, this place was rather cheap and comfy. Ignoring Leon's gaze, I moved into the inn and walked over to the receptionist. 2 rooms, please. That would be 67 rent for the night. For 2, it would be 134. Can we do less? No, the price is fixed. We are almost fully booked. All right. I tried to negotiate the price at the inn, but with so many people around, I had no luck lowering it. It's a pity, but I guess I have no choice. Pausing, I looked at Leon. He was staring at me with a strange look. One that seemed to be a mix of disgust and disappointment. It was a look unbefitting of a knight. Why are you? You know you're a multi-millionaire, right? I blinked my eyes. Yes, I more or less had over 70 million ren saved up. But where was he going with this? You know the money you're using was given to you by the family head in order to take care of the accommodation for the 2 of us, right? Yes, indeed, the family head had given me some money for this trip. It was about 20,000 rand. Cheap bastard. He gave me a little, but it's not much. Anyway, what's your point? It couldn't be that he wanted my money, right? Hell no. Leon just stared at me without saying a word. And yet, his stare said 1,000 words. It was so intense that I instinctively began justifying my actions. Okay, well, I have to save up a lot. You can also sell if things go bad. Right, though I agreed, I could tell his words were dripping with sarcasm. But I wasn't joking. If things did go bad, he was gone. Every little rent counts, you know. It may only seem like 67 rand, but if I spend it continuously, it'll just add up. Sure, it's true that I get to keep whatever I don't spend, but that's not the main reason I'm doing this. I'm just teaching you the value of money. Yes, it's my money. I know. Fuck you. Okay. I pursed my lips. Why did it feel like I was the one losing the argument? Tisk. I clicked my tongue and turned away from Leon. Taking the key to my room, I didn't wait for him and made my way up to my room, which was located on the 3rd floor. For a small inn, the room was quite decent. With a dominant wooden theme, its simplicity stood out, while the white walls provided a perfect contrast to the wooden floor and furniture. I set my things on the floor and took a seat on the wooden chair. Crossing my legs, I checked my pocket watch. Any minute now. Knowing the importance of the Congress, I understood it was best to arrive early. That way, even if there were delays, I would still be on time.
Of course, it would have been even better if I had gone earlier, but I had only just received the news, so there was no way I could have prepared in advance. Still, as of right now, I had about a few hours to myself. And I was also sure I wasn't the only one. Are you waiting for someone? A soft voice whispered in the air as a figure soon appeared before me shortly after. Looking up, Delilah stood in front of me, her clothes the same as they were before. I stood up and put my pocket watch away. Yes, actually. Who? You. Me. I simply smiled at her. I knew her well enough to know what her patterns were. In that sense, I knew she was going to come find me when she had time. I take it that you're free now. A little. She blinked her eyes, seemingly unable to follow the conversation. How much? 10 minutes. Her tone sounded rather resigned. Well, indeed, 10 minutes was practically nothing. Oh, I see. It's a pity. Why do you ask? Well, I have some free time, so I was thinking of going around to Visi. I'll go. Delilah's voice raised. But didn't you? I have free time. Before I could get the next words in, she faded away from the spot. I stared at the empty spot before me and scratched the side of my neck. Things turned out as I expected. For the past 6 months, she had done nothing but work. As her part-time assistant, I saw firsthand just how busy she was. During those times, I frequently overheard her saying, "I want a break. I don't want to do this." I even grew a little worried when I saw her reject chocolate from me. In that sense, I thought it would be good if she took some time off work. It was good that she liked the idea, as she reappeared in front of me 10 minutes later, wearing different clothes. More casual and lighter ones. She also appeared to be holding on to something. I'm ready. What is that in your hand? Is that a book? Why is it so big? Hold on. I took a closer look at the book and saw the title that said, Nezrit Guidebook, Places to Visit and Sightsee. But not only that, I could even see that it was somewhat worn out. Wait, don't tell me she had been planning this from the start. I was stunned, but before I could fully snap out of it, I felt a tug on my arm as she pulled me toward the door. Trust me, I know where to go. No, that's not the issue. Then what is? Delilah stopped and looked at me, impatience clearly written on her face. Come on, what are you waiting for? Stop dragging things out. I'm just saying, we don't have that much time. Like 3 hours at best. Considering how big that book is, I don't think we'll be able to. Oh, that's fine. Don't worry and leave it to me. We can spend the 3 hours like they're 3 weeks. Why do I not trust her at all? Hurry. All right. Seeing how impatient she was getting, I decided to stop dragging things out. Leaving Delilah aside, whose lips were twitching in an upward curve that she tried to pull back down repeatedly, I walked over to the next room and knocked. Leon opened the door shortly after. What is I? He froze the moment his eyes landed on Delilah, quickly wiping them as if to make sure he wasn't seeing things. But when he looked at us again, his expression twisted. Seeing his reaction, I contained my laugh and showed up the time. Well, let's go. We don't have much time for ourselves. He's coming. Of course. The moment I agreed, Delilah's lips finally stopped moving, and her expression twisted. Yes, twisted. She looked like she was ready to murder someone. I covered my mouth then. On the other hand, Leon took a step back. He hastily looked at me. What is going on? Why is she? I dismissively waved my hand. Come on, let's go. Stop wasting time. Leon pressed his lips tightly before glaring at me and then lowering his head in Delilah's direction, as though he was trying to greet her. All he received was a cold and murderous look. This look persisted on our way down as we made our way out of the inn. Though her face remained stoic, I could see right through her facade as her expression shifted through a range of emotions: sadness, anger, disappointment. She looked even more dejected than when she was overworked, as if questioning her life choices and convincing herself the world was against her. How amusing. I wish I could take a photo of her face. My fingers twitched at the thought, but I didn't want to push my luck. By the time we finally stepped out of the inn, Delilah's expression had shifted from that of a murderer to that of a mass slaughterer. It almost felt as if she were leaving a trail of blood in her wake. Her expression was so terrifying that people around us instinctively stepped aside, creating a wide berth. And this was even when Delilah had made it so that people couldn't see her. Well, coming to a stop in front of the inn, I looked at Leon. Have fun. Make sure you get your stuff. Yes. As if eager to escape, Leon gave us a quick nod before swiftly backing away and disappearing into the busy streets. I waved until his figure quickly faded from my sight. At the same time, I felt Delilah's dazed gaze on me. She appeared to have so many questions for me. That was when I explained. Leon doesn't have any formal clothing for the event. He is going to one of the shops to get something for himself. Quote. Exclamation mark question mark quote. Delilah's brows rose, and soon she looked at me in shock. Why did you? Is there an issue? Delilah quickly shook her head. No, none at all. Okay, then. I moved a little closer to her, much to her shock. There's a lot of people, so we might get lost. You don't mind, do you? Shake, shake, shake. Delilah hastily shook her head. She seemed to want to say something but appeared unable to as her mouth pursed into an X shape. Well, not really, but it felt like it did. Should we go then? Yes. Stepping closer to me, she strode forward, her steps fast. I followed her from behind, and we soon entered the main streets of the city, completely unnoticed by everyone around us. 578. Since it looks like you know where to go, where should we go? My gaze unconsciously drifted to the thick book in Delilah's hands. Ever since we left the inn, she would stop, glance at the book, and then head in a specific direction. This had gone on at least 5 times. Normally, I wouldn't have minded, but seeing people around me stare at Delilah, I couldn't help but feel my lips twitch. Didn't she make it so people wouldn't look at her? Yet, even so, her presence alone was enough to draw attention. What kind of power was this? I felt like we were in some sort of zoo. Wherever we passed, gazes would wander our way. Well, Delilah's way. Unlike her, I knew how to hide my face well. Oh, shit, looks like someone is finally getting the courage to come talk to her. Just one look his way and I could tell he was someone with somewhat of a status. He also appeared powerful enough to notice something off with Delilah. I found a nice place. Want to check it out? But we're almost. I grabbed Delilah by the shoulders and brought her into the nearest shop. I glanced around. The shop was spacious yet filled with a pleasant, aromatic scent that was soothing to the senses. Ahead were several rows of different clothing, all unique and different than the one I was used to. That's when I realized, it was a clothing store. He's here. Looking back, I grabbed a few outfits off the rack and hurriedly pulled Delilah toward the changing rooms before closing the curtain behind me. She had been strangely obedient ever since I pulled her into the store. Well, you should try these. I think they might not be. I stopped halfway through my sentence as I heard the sound of her breath. It was somewhat quick. That's when I realized the kind of situation we had gotten ourselves into. I swallowed quietly and looked towards the closed curtain. I was in a haste, so I didn't think much when I entered. My words were met with silence. Glancing down, I noticed Delilah's gaze fixed on my nose. The space was tight, and with even the slightest movement, we'd be inches away from touching. I tried moving my head back to draw some distance between us, but as though my head was a magnet, Delilah's head followed. I licked my lips and tried to start a conversation. Quote. How far did you say the sightseeing place was? It shouldn't be far, right? I already what did she just say? Delilah pulled the handbook behind her and added. There's another one, but it's far. No, I'm pretty sure you said it was close just a few minutes ago. You heard wrong. So you say. No, it is. Sure, it will take a long time, so we can stay here. Quote. Quote. There it was. Her real motive. However, what could I say to her? Seeing how she was so insistent on it, I decided to stay quiet. But with that being said, Delilah's gaze continued to remain fixed on my face, and I felt a lump form in my throat. Just how long was she going to stare for? It was rather uncomfortable. The notifications flashing in front of me were starting to get increasingly annoying. Thankfully, this hell didn't persist for very long. By the time I was sure that the weirdo was gone, I pulled out of the changing room and reminded Delilah to try on the clothes before leaving. She never did try the clothes though, saying something like, they don't look quite nice. You should have picked something better. But if you also wear the same one, then, well, sure, I did pick them randomly, but it was for the sake of the situation. In the end, coming out of the shop, we decided to go to a more secluded street in order to avoid any attention. We eventually stopped by the place that Delilah wanted to see, and as expected, it was only a 5-minute walk. I didn't even bother bringing it up to her, knowing she would just randomly switch the topic or feign ignorance. Overall, the place was quite nice. It had a nice view, and I managed to relax a little. Unfortunately, it was soon nighttime. Before I knew it, the 3 hours were up, and thus, I had no choice but to bid farewell to Delilah, who glared at her pocket watch, mumbling things like, "Scam. Did I get scammed? How could it be?" Seeing how distressed she was, I looked at my pocket watch and laughed. That would make the two of us. I think I also got scammed. Evanus household. Father, may I come in? You may. As Linus entered the family head's office, he immediately saw the family head sitting behind the desk, wearing his usual stern expression. Although he was aware of Linus's presence, Aldrich kept his attention on the documents before him. Scribble tilde. As a result, Linus stood in front of him with an awkward expression. Each second Linus stood there felt like an eternity, and just when he couldn't hold it any longer, Aldrich finally broke the silence. I heard that you managed to rank 3rd overall this year. Ah, yes. Linus's head shot up the moment he heard his father's words. Ever since the incident with Julian in the mirror dimension, it was as if something had shattered within him. This led to a significant leap in both his abilities and the way others perceived him. As a result, he managed to rank up all the way to the 3rd rank. He was still not the Black Star, but at the rate that he was growing, it wouldn't be possible for him to reach it by the 2nd year. That is not bad. Yes. Hearing Aldrich's words, Linus's ears perked up. He felt a strange sense of excitement. This, while it wasn't exactly a compliment, it was still a lot better than anything his father had ever said. He was clearly satisfied, and Linus felt moved. But, of course, the excitement didn't last for long. I've received word that your brother, Julian, has recently regained the 1st rank. Aldrich paused and put the pen down before raising his head. What do you take of that? A complicated look flashed Linus's features. He still hated and despised his brother, yet, in a strange way, he had also played a part in helping him grow to this point. There were moments when his brother seemed like a completely different person from the one he had seen in the nightmares and the one he knew. But at the same time, he couldn't forget the moment when his brother had revealed his true self to him. Was he acting, or was there more to it? Regardless of that, if there was one thing that he couldn't deny, it was the fact that his brother was a monster. His rate of growth was unbelievable, and his achievements were second to none. It wouldn't be a stretch to say he was currently the most known cadet. But at the same time, he was also the scariest. Haven's Demon King was what they called him, but the rumor was quickly shut down when Julian found out about it, and he started giving a beating to anyone he heard saying that name. Considering he had never reacted that way to his previous nickname, the twin star of the Evanus household, it was likely that he loved his previous nickname. With a sigh, Linus turned to his father again. Within the academy, there's no one that has more prestige than Julian. I've seen his strength firsthand, and I don't see any foul play. In that sense, I have nothing to say about his achievements. He earned them. I see. Aldrich nodded, but for a brief moment, Linus felt like he caught a fleeting, barely noticeable curve of his lips. However, it lasted only a moment, vanishing as quickly as it appeared, leaving Linus questioning whether what he had seen was real or just his imagination. Unfortunately, he never found out, as he was quickly dismissed from the room, leaving Aldrich alone to lean back in his chair. He stood in silence for a brief moment before a figure appeared beside him. Family head. Aldrich merely acknowledged with a nod as the figure started speaking. The trade deal between the Kasha is proceeding smoothly. The Verlice family has agreed to act as an intermediary between us, and over the past several months, we've made significant profits. Should we reinvest the profits into the territory? Not yet, but if we don't, our neighboring households will become restless. As it stands, they'll begin to attack us, claiming that we're not properly managing our land. As they should. Taken aback, the figure met Aldrich's gaze, his eyes dark and endless. Like pools of black that seemed to lead straight into the abyss. Those eyes. They didn't seem like the eyes of a mere family head. What sort of? Cutting his thoughts short was the family head's cold voice. You need to do what you're told. Nothing more, nothing less. A chance occurred then. It was as if his eyes had come alive. They twisted unnervingly, as though they were attempting to swallow him whole. Thankfully, the sensation only lasted for a brief moment before Aldrich turned away and dismissed him. You may go. The figure didn't wait a single second before fading from the spot. It was only after he had left that Aldrich focused his attention back to his work. Scribble tilde. He continued to work on the files for the next few hours until he suddenly recalled something. Oh, Right, he checked the time. Julian and Leon should have already arrived at the Congress. The Congress was a highly significant event that most would never think of skipping. Aldrich, however, had no intention of attending himself, instead sending Leon and Julian in his place. There were various reasons, but it mostly had to do with the fact that he was too busy handling the situation within his territory. It needed his full attention. With that in mind, Aldrich's thoughts drifted to the letter on his desk. It bore a golden insignia, the symbol of the Verdant Empire. I guess they're finally going to make their move. Their goal was clear, Leon. The Emperor and the Empress were most likely going to reveal Leon's origin at the Congress. It would surely be a sight to see. Still, the fact that they had only recently discovered Leon's origins and whereabouts seemed somewhat amusing. This was especially considering their power and connections. As they say, it's what's hidden in plain sight that's far more elusive than what's hidden behind a veil. Tap, tap, tap. Aldrich tapped onto the wooden table, mumbling. Leon, 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 579. Ah, Amael, it looks like things have been going well for you at the academy. Welcoming Amael inside a private room was none other than the Empress, as she extended both hands in an attempt to hug him. Amael simply sidestepped her, his gaze shifting to the Emperor, who sat on a single-seat red sofa, engrossed in his book. Finally taking note of him, the Emperor placed the book down and turned to face Amael. Looks like you made it in time. Yes, I was stuck with a few things. It was more that he wanted to go with Leon, but Julian left without warning, leaving him no choice but to go by himself. Well, technically, his fiancée Agatha did go with him, so he wasn't. Nonetheless, it would have been best if he had gone with Leon. Especially now that they were ready to reveal to him his lineage and real identity. This decision came after Amael had observed Leon enough to know that he would be able to take the news without resentment. Not only that, but after a thorough examination, they were now completely certain that Leon was indeed related to them by blood. There was no better opportunity to reveal his true lineage than at the Congress, where the world's superpowers were gathered. It would not only legitimize the announcement but also ensure that all the powerful figures recognized his face and understood exactly who he was. But there was only one problem. Father, there's something I'm somewhat hesitant about. Speak. Amael licked his lips. Don't you think it would be best to tell Leon in advance before suddenly dumping it all on him? I feel like it might actually make him resent us if we do it this way. Amael, you understand best why we have to do it like this, right? But, this is to ensure his safety. You must understand that if we were able to confirm Leon as part of our family, then the other royal family members and their factions have likely noticed something as well. Yes, Amael nodded his head faintly. He had indeed noticed subtle movements from the other noble houses and the branch families. Leon's presence brought instability to the royal family, and while it was decided that Amael would be the most likely one to inherit the throne, the other members didn't see it the same way. There were many factions in the Verdant Empire, with several eyeing the throne. If Leon joined and supported Amael, then the fine balance that was created would shatter. This was why the Emperor and Empress were so hesitant to meet Leon and inform him in advance. They couldn't risk the news leaking under any circumstances. In order to ensure that it didn't, they planned on announcing everything when the Congress started. There were certainly better ways to handle this, and Amael felt the same, but to minimize the risks, the Emperor and Empress chose this approach. I'm not sure how he'll react to the news, but if we explain it to him later, I hope he'll understand. Do you think he would be upset? I don't know. Amael wasn't too sure. He didn't think Leon would show too much of a reaction. Unless it involved Julian, Leon didn't seem like someone who would get easily flustered. Of course, these were merely his thoughts after having observed him for almost a year. But the concerns were still there. There's no use overthinking this. The Congress is about to begin, and since we've already made our decision, we should see it through. Standing up from his seat, the Emperor set his book aside and massaged his face. Almost instantly, his demeanor shifted, transforming into one of regal authority. At that moment, he was no longer a concerned father but the emperor of one of the four great empires. Ah, it was just as he was about to leave that he suddenly recalled something. Turning around, he eyed Amael. Should we also reveal his real name to the public? Real name. Amael fell into thought. Indeed, Leon. His real name wasn't Leon. At the very least, it wasn't the name he had been given at birth. His real name was Varith. This place sure looks grand. Up close, the palace hosting the Congress was even more imposing and breathtaking than it had appeared from a distance. Towering pillars soared several dozen meters high, while a massive red carpet stretched across the marble floor. Elegantly dressed attendees in various formal attire moved through the grand entrance, adding to the palace's atmosphere. Watching the countless people pass by, I felt out of place, yet, at the same time, it also felt as if I stood out more than ever. No, we're probably standing out. Leon and I weren't exactly the ugliest of people. And not only that, but we were also somewhat famous. I think I've seen them before. My ears perked up as I heard the whispers of the people around us. I gave Leon a side eye. Looks like they recognize the two of us. We did make it to the finals of the summit. That's true. I lifted my head as I stepped onto the palace grounds. Considering my newfound celebrity status, I realized I needed to carry myself with the right demeanor. Not only was I an award-winning actor, but I was also the most talented cadet within the 4 empires. It wasn't surprising that they knew who I was. Julie, the twin stars of the Evanis household. Yes, it's the twin stars. The twin stars. Kill me, and then Leon. Please. Oh, you guys finally showed up. Amid my despair, a familiar voice rang out as Aoife appeared in the distance. Dressed in an exquisitely crafted red gown that complemented her fiery hair, she effortlessly drew the attention of many as she made her way toward us. Behind her were 2 guards in silver armor. What's wrong with your faces? It looks like you both ate shish. Aoife hastily covered her mouth before she could finish her sentence and looked behind towards the 2 guards who kept their attention fixed elsewhere. With a visible twitch of her lips, Aoife took a deep breath and recomposed herself. As I was saying, you guys don't look good. It's because we've just been harassed. Harassed? Who would even harass you? You wouldn't understand. I sighed in silence before switching the topic. Where are Kira and Evelyn? You usually are always with them. Oh, about that. Aoife gestured toward the distance, where 2 figures stood by the buffet area. The 2 immediately stood out, and not because of their appearance, but because of their antics. With a neatly held handkerchief, Evelyn carefully picked up several items, sampling the snacks with delight before pulling out a small notepad and jotting something down. Beside her, Kira stood in stark contrast, eagerly shoveling food into her mouth without restraint. It was I don't know them. Aoife perfectly summarized the situation. In that sense, I now understood why she was by herself. Well, it's a good thing you 2 arrived early. With the attention you're already drawing, I can't imagine how chaotic it would be if you had shown up later when the place is completely packed. That would be rather troublesome. I could already see people eyeing us like hawks, ready to pounce on the 2 of us at any second. If not for Aoife being present, they would have already done so. On that note, this is also a great opportunity for the 2 of you. How so? To build connections for your family. There are so many high-ranking nobles here, whether from this empire or others. Plus, several major merchant houses and guild leaders are also in attendance. Cooperating with any such figure would massively benefit your houses and you. Well, true, but helping the family wouldn't really benefit me that much. It would at most give me more status. However, the Evanis family was clearly something that the current family head was in full control of. By the time I gained control of the place, several decades would have passed. Oh, I've been meaning to ask something. Disrupting me out of my thoughts, Aoife suddenly asked. What church is your house currently affiliated with? Why would this matter? The delegates from all 7 churches will also be present. Each is sending an envoy, and depending on which church your house is affiliated with, you might even receive their blessing. I turned to look at Leon. I had no clue about the church our current household was affiliated with. No, it was more like I had forgotten. Mortem, Leon answered in a flat tone shortly after. The Evanis household is affiliated with the Church of Mortem. I opened my mouth but soon closed it. I wasn't even surprised by this. Thinking about the 7 church gathering that had happened a while back and how Leon had chosen Mortem, it made sense. In fact, I was probably the weird one for not choosing Mortem. Not that I had much of a choice in the matter. Considering the circumstances I had found myself in back then, it had been for the best that I had chosen Cithras instead of Mortem. The Church of Mortem? Yes, that makes sense. I think the Verlice household is also affiliated with them. If that's the case then. Aoife's speech suddenly began to slur, her words faltering as if she had experienced a glitch. She started repeating the same phrases over and over, and when I tried to speak, I came to a sudden realization. I can't speak at all. Before panic could set in, my vision blurred, and a wave of dizziness washed over me. I felt my body grow heavy, slipping beyond my control. This feeling, it was somewhat familiar, and that was when I realized. I'm experiencing a vision. TZZZ. A static noise filled my ears all of a sudden. Confused, I strained to look ahead as the world around me began to shift, or at least, it tried to. TZZZ. The static sound echoed once more as my vision glitched. Or rather, it became shrouded by a strange, hazy veil, making it difficult to see through. What in the? Confused, I tried to rip the veil, but as hard as I tried, it wouldn't budge at all. At least, not until the static sound echoed again. TZZZ. In that moment, I caught a glimpse of what was behind the veil. A pair of yellow eyes. They stared straight at me. But soon, the veil covered the vision once more. What is going on? TZZZ. As the static sound reverberated once more, my gaze dropped to what seemed to be a marble floor. There, spreading across its smooth surface, was a pool of blood. TZZZ. The image was cut short, only for it to return again as a boot appeared on top of the puddle. It was made of black leather, with intricate golden embroidery. TZZZ. But that was all I saw before the veil appeared once more. And then, ah, so you're also here. A voice reached my ears. It echoed from all surroundings. What sort of? Wham! Suddenly, light flooded my vision as the world around me seemed to stretch and distort in all directions. By the time I snapped out of it, a loud voice echoed throughout. Please welcome, the envoys of the Church of Oricleus. 580. Draped in white garments, with a golden eye embroidered at the center, the envoys of the Church of Oricleus stepped into the palace. Their presence instantly drew the attention of all those present, all eyes falling on them. Something about their pristine attire and composed demeanor effortlessly drew the attention of everyone around. Looking at them, they felt almost holy, as if they belonged to another world. This was how I felt when staring at them, but at the same time, something about them felt uncomfortable. Julian, was it because of the vision I had just experienced? Because of the strange static feeling during the vision. Julian, something about their current presence felt extremely unsettling. As though, their presence was the reason for why my vision had turned out the way it did. Wait, could it be? And then, my eyes fell on a certain individual. Standing behind the cardinal, dressed in stark black attire and followed by several others, he was impossible to miss. His long black hair cascaded down his back, framing striking green eyes and features that could only be described as handsome, making him stand out even more. And then, his gaze fell on me. And soon, a smile crept on his face. It was as though he had expected to see me from the start. His lips parted, forming words in a way that only I could understand. Found you, Julian, ! A powerful tug on my shoulder pulled me around, and I found myself staring into a pair of gray eyes. Leon's brows were furrowed tightly, his gaze locked onto mine. Is everything okay? Okay, why wouldn't they be? I responded as calmly as I could have, but perhaps due to my shaken state, my words came out more hurried than intended. Leon's brows furrowed once again. In the end, he shook his head and pulled his hand away. Your face is pale, and you're sweating quite a bit. Are you sure that you're okay? Without answering him, I touched the side of my face and realized he was right, I was indeed sweating profusely. Given his words, I didn't even need a mirror to know that my face must have been pale. But still, it wasn't as though I could just tell him what was going on. Given the circumstances, I could only respond with a simple, I'm okay. So you say. Leon didn't believe me at all. As I looked at him, he seemed to sense something, his gaze shifting toward the Oricleus church. By now, they had moved far ahead, venturing deeper into the palace to greet the other guests. Is it them? Not quite. What do you mean not quite? It's something else. As I said those words, I stared at the notification that had flashed before my very eyes. Filled Diamond Main Quest activated, Royal Dilemma. Character progression plus 317%. Game progression plus 14%. Failure. Aoife K. Megrail 38%. Kira Milna 4%. Evelyn J. Verlice 15%. Haha. Staring at the notification, I found myself at a loss for how to react. In some ways, I had always known it was only a matter of time before the quests returned. But still, I had desperately hoped it would still take a while more before they returned. Because I understood that something troublesome was about to occur. The quests, they never really brought anything that made my life easy. In fact, I can even argue that with the presence of the Oracleus church members, the quests have become even harder. Instead of easing the life of the one they worship, they're doing everything possible to make it more difficult. What a bunch of fucking heretics. I took a deep breath and shook my head. There was no use musing over such matters. My thoughts quickly drifted towards the vision and the quest in front of me. By now, I already had enough clues to get a gist of what was happening. The quest is called Royal Dilemma. Aoife seems to be the one most affected by this. Looking back at the vision, the pair of yellow eyes, the pool of blood, and the black boot adorned with golden embroidery, it most likely involves the royal family. It wasn't too hard to put the pieces together. Of course, I also understood that I couldn't jump the gun quickly. There were several occasions where I jumped to conclusions too early, making me miss very important details of the visions. In that sense, I had to tread carefully. But still, the presence of the Church of Oracleus is making me feel unsettled. Especially recalling the strange individual in black with green eyes and black hair. I didn't need to think hard to understand why he had mouthed those words to me, and who he was. The moment I saw him, I knew, he was the one who had disrupted me multiple times back at Kira's place. The one who had called me the fake fragment, and had rambled on with endless nonsense. From the moment he mouthed those words to me, I knew, he had been aware of my identity for some time and had only now chosen to reveal himself. He had most likely been preparing for this very moment. But, that saves me a lot of trouble. I had been meaning to find him for quite some time. Not only had he been making my life more difficult by interfering with my visions, but the blood that flowed through his veins. I needed it back. If there was one thing I was sure about, it was that the moment I consumed his blood, I'd be able to fill the gaps that had been missing in my mind. From the strange sense of emptiness that I often felt whenever I thought about the past, to the growth that I'd experienced. Perhaps then, I'd truly become Oracleus, and that was something I needed to become. In order to be able to even put up a fight against Cithras, I had no choice but to become Oracleus. But before anything else, I needed to find a way to get my hands on his blood. And this was the furthest thing from easy. Surrounded by members of the Church of Oracleus, eliminating him and claiming the blood would be anything but easy. Thankfully, it wasn't as though I was completely helpless. But whether I could do it or not was something I didn't know. For now, I only planned on observing before taking action. Julian, let's leave. The Congress is going to begin soon. It was Leon's voice that snapped me out of my thoughts. Raising my head and looking at him, I quietly nodded before turning around and heading deeper into the building. Deep within the building, inside of a large private room, several figures stood. It's a pleasure to be graced by your presence, Cardinal. Haha, the pleasure is mine. A graceful figure approached the Cardinal. With long blonde hair and striking yellow eyes, Atlas greeted him with a smile. His smile was smooth, warm almost. It looks like you're the first to arrive from the 7 churches. Atlas's gaze eventually shifted to the 6 figures standing behind the Cardinal, each clad in black robes. Unlike the Cardinal, they appeared much younger, yet their presence radiated a certain pressure. Enough to rival the top cadets within Haven. These are, how silly of me. The Cardinal stepped to the side and introduced the younglings. These are my apprentices, each carefully nurtured to succeed me when my time finally comes. This right here is. Cardinal Ambrose introduced them one by one, before eventually stopping at Jackal, who moved by himself, extending his hand in Atlas's direction. It's nice to meet you. I've heard a lot about you. Jackal's antics prompted Atlas to raise a brow, studying the young man before him with keen interest. Indeed, staring at him, he felt he was different from the other disciples he met. Not only did he appear calmer than the others, but he was also noticeably more powerful. His very presence set him apart, drawing Atlas's attention. In a way, he seemed to remind Atlas of Julian. But at the same time, the two felt strikingly different. Atlas couldn't quite put it into words, but Jackal gave him an uncomfortable feeling. It wasn't one that would make him feel alarmed, but something about him felt off. It didn't take long for him to figure it out, however. Lowering his gaze to Jackal's outstretched hand, a faint smile tugged at Atlas's lips. After a brief pause, he extended his own hand and shook it.
The pleasure is mine. You seem like quite a promising prospect. You remind me a lot of another cadet within the academy. Oh, Jackal raised his brow. Could that cadet be Julian? You know him? Ah, yes, Jackal smiled. I've heard quite a lot about him. I'm a big fan, especially of his accomplishments at the summit. He was indeed quite impressive. Atlas withdrew his hand and redirected his attention back to the cardinal. If you would excuse me, I have matters to tend to. I've received news that the delegates from the other churches have arrived. I hope you all have a pleasant stay. With a graceful bow, Atlas excused himself and quietly left the premises of the room. At the same time, Jackal remained silent, his hand still outstretched. Jackal. It was only when the cardinal's voice echoed that Jackal snapped out of whatever trance he was in and turned around. Are you okay? Did something happen? No, I'm fine, Jackal answered calmly. I was just in thought. A little nervous perhaps. I see. Then that's fine. Walking up to Jackal, Cardinal Ambrose placed his hand over his shoulder and patted it. Don't worry too much about it. The other churches have already prepared to announce their saint candidates. There's no reason for you to feel nervous. It's just a formality. Nothing will really change. I understand, Jackal answered with a smile, slowly pulling his hand behind his back. There was a specific reason he did so. It was to hide the trembling. Indeed, he had been a little too arrogant. He had originally thought he wouldn't have been noticed, but he was quickly proven wrong. Atlas saw right through him. Nonetheless, he still found something interesting. Dawn, Jackal mumbled. I don't know what it means, but it feels like some pretty important information.